Jim Harper, welcome.
Thanks, Dan.
I guess let's get started with, why are you running for Congress?
We have been really fortunate in Northwest Indiana to be represented by Pete Visclosky for the last almost 36 years. And I believe that we need, in our next representative, somebody who's going to continue the work that he's done on critical projects that have driven investment to our region. Work on projects like expanding rail, double tracking Westlake, making sure that we are promoting and taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the national park, supporting our steel industry. So we need somebody who continues to do that, but also continues to represent the region with integrity, like Pete's done, and I believe I can do those things. At the same time, now that we're choosing a new representative, I think that there is an exciting opportunity for a new generation of leadership for Northwest Indiana, and I'd like to provide that as well.
Have you held elected office before?
I have not.
So what makes you want to go into public service? You're a successful attorney in Valparaiso. I mean, Congress isn't exactly the most well-liked, well-functional place these days. What makes you want to be a part of that?
Well, you know, I kind of grew up around people who were involved in public service. So my mom is the Republican Circuit Court judge in Porter County. She is actually the longest-serving female judge in Indiana state court history, something I'm very proud of. She's going to be retiring at the end of the year. My dad was a county commissioner, county prosecutor. So I saw firsthand the value and impact of public service from them. I saw it when I worked for Pete Visclosky in college, and I think we need that now more than ever. You know, you touched on some of the acrimony, some of the issues that we see in Washington, D.C. right now. Obviously, I'm aware of those, but it makes me want to serve even more, because I think this is a critical time in our country's history, and I think that I have a voice that I could add to that conversation.
How did you end up being a Democrat if you come from a Republican family?
You know, that's a good question. My dad actually is a Democrat, so my dad was a Democratic elected official. I guess he was more persuasive. But, you know, more seriously, I think that both of my parents, I like to think that both of my parents instilled values in me that have led me to both take on jobs and projects that have served other people, and to be a Democrat, because I believe that the Democratic Party, the reason that I'm a Democrat fundamentally is because the Democratic Party is focused on helping everybody and helping working people, and those are some of the values that I hope my parents instilled in me.
Do you think you'd be able to work with Republicans in Congress?
Absolutely. You know, and we have to work with Republicans in Washington, D.C. and in Indiana as well, you know, because a lot of the, and Pete's been great at that. It's one of the things Pete has done really well. He's certainly been very true to his values as a Democrat, but at the same time hasn't let that stop him from making relationships and making progress with Republicans. It's something that I value and will focus on.
You mentioned earlier your support for the South Shore projects. What do you see needs to be done with that beyond where we are now? Yeah,
so I mean, obviously they're on the right track, pun intended. They are on the right track right now because of the work of Pete and leaders in the region and around the state. And I think the most important thing is that we have a congressman who is, or a member of Congress who's committed to seeing that through, and who's going to continue to advocate to make sure that that federal funding, which is lined up right now, actually materializes.
Do you have a position on impeachment?
I do. You know, this is, I think, a really important issue. And the evidence to me is abundantly clear, from the evidence from the phone call with the Ukrainian president to the testimony that we've seen in the House Intelligence Committee this week, the testimony of Ambassador Sondland yesterday. It is plain that the president used American foreign military aid to try and obtain personal political advantage. That is not only inappropriate, it's not only undermining our democratic institutions, it's also a threat to our national security when we're playing politics with foreign military aid. So I think that the evidence is clear. As a member of Congress, I'm not going to sit idly by as the president tramples on our democratic institutions, and I do support impeachment.
Do you think that's going to... Congressman Nunes today was saying that he thinks the impeachment effort, regardless of the result, is going to permanently damage the United States. Is that something you agree with?
I think that it could permanently damage the United States if we allow the president to run roughshod over our democratic institutions and we don't say anything about it. That's where I think the risk is. Congress has one tool when the president commits serious violations of potential criminal laws, but certainly of our democratic norms and institutions. It has one option, one tool in its toolkit to really stand up to that, and that is impeachment. And I think it should be a last resort, but the evidence is abundantly clear.
Congressman Visclosky's decision not to run kind of came out of left field for a lot of people. You seemed ready to go pretty quickly in terms of making an announcement and getting into this race. Were you ready to go? Was this something you were thinking about as a possibility, or how did you decide you wanted to run for this?
Well, I was certainly taken by surprise. I think, like everybody else was, when the congressman announced his retirement. But when he did, I started thinking about it seriously, talking about it with other people right away, because we have an election coming up pretty soon, in less than 6 months. It's certainly something that's been in the back of my mind before, that I'd given a little bit of thought to before. Obviously, it wasn't an option until the congressman announced that he wasn't going to run for re-election. But once he did, I thought it was time to hit the ground running.
You mentioned you had worked for Congressman Visclosky. Can you talk about what that experience was like and maybe what you learned from him?
Absolutely. So I was an intern for him in college, actually, at IU. It was my first job I had, first summer rather, while I was there. And it was a great experience working at the Maryville office, seeing his commitment to constituent service. That was the main duty of that office, was constituent service. That's an absolutely critical part of a member of Congress's job, to make sure that we are helping residents in the district when they have issues with the federal government, and really fighting for them and being their advocate in many of those situations. So it showed me the value of that, and also just in general, working there and then watching Congressman Visclosky's work. He's been my congressman most of my life. Has shown me the value of public service. It's shown me how a commitment to public service can have a real world impact on people's everyday lives, on the lives of everyday people.
Some reasonably high-profile names from Lake County have already announced that they're joining this race. A lot of the voters in your district are right here in Lake County. How do you overcome that?
Sure. So we're going to spend a lot of time in Lake County. I think that any candidate in this race is probably going to be more familiar to voters in a certain part of the district, and it's incumbent upon them to campaign, to introduce themselves to voters in other parts of the district, and to provide a reason why they are worthy of those voters' support. So I certainly recognize the challenge and the opportunity that presents. I'm committed, if I'm elected, to being a member of Congress for the entire region, from Michigan City to Hammond, from Lowell to Couts, and places and cities and towns in between. That is something that I take very seriously, and I'll be working very hard to earn the trust and the vote of residents around Northwest Indiana over the next several months.
Do you have any opinions on the other candidates who've announced campaigns?
I don't. There are some friends whose names have are already in or whose names have been floated. I know that there's going to be strong options for the people of Northwest Indiana, and I'm looking forward to a spirited campaign with all of them.
Is there anything else you think voters should know about you?
I don't think so, Dan. I think we've covered most of it. The one thing that I would say, and we've talked about some really important issues, is that I think that we need a member of Congress who not only obviously continues Pete's work on the issues that we've talked about, which I think are critical to our regional economy. I think we also, need someone who's proposing some bold ideas for a lot of issues facing our country at large, because this is a really important time in our country's history. We obviously talked about the need to hold the president accountable, but we also need bold ideas when it comes to ensuring that absolutely every American has access to affordable health care, addressing the climate crisis, working to create good paying jobs in Northwest Indiana and around the country. So we're going to try and propose some of those bold ideas over this campaign. And I think that, at this time in our country's history, it really calls for that.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Thanks, guys.